Welcome everyone to the another episode. We have a Mr. Danny Greeves all the way from Norwich, UK. So Danny is a multi-award-winning professional coach, hypnotherapist, author, and speaker, specializing in nonverbal behavior analysis and conscious mental imagery. So Danny specializes in one-on-one coaching with business leaders, athletes, celebrities to overcome psychological barriers, improve performance, and enhance overall well-being. So in this episode, we're gonna discuss with Danny, which more about like invisible blocks, which just holding people back, our entrepreneurial journey, professional career, or even the things what we do and we love to do in our future, and even the current state. But a lot of times, what's the negative thinking and lot of unknowns obstacle, like we can call it, like is ourselves rather than anyone else, just holding us back. So we're gonna uncover this and we're gonna learn more from like a Danny from himself. And yeah, we have a good discussion around that topic today. So without further ado, let's welcome Mr. Danny to this show. So Danny, welcome to the show, and how are you doing today?
Thank you very much for having me and really excited to be here.
Yeah, it's my pleasure, and I'm super excited to have the conversation with you. Really, really dear heart to me is the topic, which is like invisible blocks just holding us back. Like it was something holding me back like a long, long time for my career path. And I know like a lot of people are struggling from that. So it'll be like really, really interesting journey to talk about that. So walk me through about before we touch base to the topic, how you get into this career path, being a professional coach, hypnotherapist, author, and everything you do right now.
Well, I would love to say it was strategically planned and mapped out, but in all honesty, it was an accident.
Right.
So I started my career as a physiotherapist. So I was really interested in helping people with chronic pain, helping people with sort of physical type pain issues. But at the same time, outside of my own work life, the
Mm,
thing that I was really struggling with was the mental side of things. So low confidence, like really struggled with anxiety, and sort of really had lots of negative thoughts that I didn't know how to shake. So, as most people do, I tried to put it off for as long as possible. And then I finally realized that I need to do something. And the thing that confused me the most is that logically I should have been in a good place, but I just knew that there was something holding me back. There was something that wasn't quite right within me that
yeah.
was really holding me back. And so that's kind of the first step that led me to reach out for a bit of help.
Okay. So obviously with your own experiences and you felt that way and obviously you reach out for help and that actually inspired you to becoming like a you can see like a more people need can be needing the help and you can help them out, isn't it?
Yeah, so I was of the mindset of I don't think talking about all my problems is going to be the answer for me. It
Mm,
might be for some, but for me, I thought, talking about my problems is not what I want to do. I want to talk about the solutions and how do I solve this. And so I went a different route. So I found a mental coach who focused on non-verbal behavior and who focused on something called emotional memory images. And it's a relatively new concept. It appeared in the literature in the last sort of 2 or 3 years, but this was back for me in 2015. And going from a place of feeling really anxious, feeling low confidence, and really, really struggling,
yeah.
within just a few months of working with these emotional memory images, my anxiety resolved, my confidence skyrocketed. I found and met a new partner who's now my wife. Like everything changed. And it was just so incredibly fast and easy that I
Mm,
thought, okay, well, I need to stop doing what I'm doing because this is much more interesting. And that
yeah.
really sort of started my journey into coaching. And then I wanted to put the research behind it. So then I did a master's degree to kind of find out, what the science says around it. I did hypnotherapy because of the effect that language has on how we think. And so all of it kind of came together in terms of helping people from a non-verbal perspective and looking at these emotional memories, which I'm happy to talk about if you want to know more.
Yeah, very interesting. So how long have you been doing that coaching and now being a therapist as well?
So pretty much I started transitioning straight away. So from 2015
Okay.
is when I sort of dived in, and then
Yeah.
I transitioned over sort of the first year and then have been sort of full time since.
All right. So it's been like a decade, isn't it? Like time flies.
It's coming up to a decade, yeah.
Yeah. So I remember I started my marketing company in 2014 and just time flies. Like it's just over 10 years now I'm doing the same business. It's crazy and just so grateful as well. Like a lot of businesses cannot survive 2, 3 years. Most of them go out of businesses like over 5 period of time, like 90% I think business.
Absolutely, yeah.
So yeah, like looking back for yourself and myself, like we did a good job like sticking around, and lot of thing happens in
That's part
between.
game, isn't it?
Yeah, like a COVID and everything like that. So yeah, it's great and entrepreneurs are like the people I work with majority of the time, and I can see that a lot of times like they struggle with their own negative thinking, their things in the past, or like something happened in the past, like holding them back for not taking the action or not moving forward with their life. Could be they make a bigger business, or could be taking the next venture in there. So walk us through like what is the invisible thing just holding us back? So when someone comes to you for guidance, advice, or like you give them therapy, like what is the main thing like people just get hold by?
And this is the most fascinating bit. This is the bit that I just find
Yeah.
so interesting. So the concept that we're covering is called emotional memory images. So it's by a couple of researchers called Hudson and Johnson. And effectively, what they help us to understand is that at any point in time, but particularly when we're growing up, and particularly around first time experiences, our first stay away from home, our first learning about a certain subject,
Mm,
particularly around first time subjects. So when we have an experience where we feel overwhelmed or we feel threatened in some way, as a safety mechanism, in that moment, our mind takes a snapshot of where we are, who we're with, what we're doing, all of the feelings that come with it. And
yeah.
this sensory information that's stored from that event is called an emotional memory image. Now, the tricky part is that these emotional memory images are then stored outside of our awareness. So they're
Right.
called non-conscious. So we might not be thinking about them on a day-to-day basis. We might not even be considering them. But whenever we come into contact with something, our mind can link back to the original event. It triggers the same stress response. It triggers the same flood of adrenaline, the same feelings of cortisol. So even if we're not quite sure what's going on, our nervous system has already responded as if we're in danger.
Hmm. Right.
And so this can be the case that maybe we're going up to do something that we know is good for us, we know is helpful, but if it links back to something that we've done before that was painful, we can't outthink that response because our nervous system acts so much faster than we can think.
Yeah.
So the key to these ongoing symptoms is the emotional memory images that have been stored. So what I focus in now is helping people clear those emotional memory images for whatever's holding them back.
Right. And do you think like the emotional memory being built over the trauma, or like things doesn't go the expected, something happened in the past, could be an accident, losing someone, loved ones, or like loss in the business, things like that?
All of the above.
Okay.
So if we think there's a part of the brain called the amygdala, and
Yeah.
the amygdala is important for assigning an event what's called a valence. And a
Hmm.
valence is just an emotional value. So for any event that our system judges as being on the extreme side of painful, whether that's losing money or a loved one, as soon as it's judged as being a negative experience, that's when our mind generates the emotional memory image. And so we all have different emotional memory images for different topics based on what we've grown up in.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be those big traumas that you might read about in the news. For the majority of the time, it's just an experience where we were overwhelmed. And I don't know about you, but between the ages of 4 and 11, it's pretty easy to get overwhelmed because the world can be a scary place. So we tend to accumulate lots of this childhood stuff, and
Mm.
because it's stored outside of our awareness, we get stuck with the feelings, but not much else. And that's why it's such an interesting conundrum to solve.
Yeah. Yeah, the you just mentioned, I had like the trauma kind of thing. Like I've been really bad bullied age 7 or 8, something like that, in them kind of age range. And
Mm,
that actually affected me a lot when I growing up, and a lot of things like I used to think, and the way I think and behaving. Before that, like till age 6 years old, I was like a really, really excited, fun guy, like always, like I don't care about anything. I was
yeah.
just like stubborn with everything. But like since I got bullied, my behavior changed, everything changes me as a person. And it took me, I think, a while till like I'm going to like a college and started to change the way I was. But it's like it haunted me for a long time, and even then till now, like sometime like I'm looking back, like this, like the moment I've uh, was going growing up, that was like a crazy moment, and I didn't feel like a living. Think about like a age at 10 or 11, like when you get bullied and everything, like you've been working for and nothing is working for you. So it was like a tough moment, and I can see that like a lot of people. I have interviewed a lot of individuals in my podcast. They have like sexual abuse during the childhood. Some of them got bullied.
Yeah.
So someone had like the parents was like neglective and things like that. They actually carried out, and later in their relationship, later in their business life, their professional life, he started to affect. So what is the strategies like you use to help those kind of clients out? Like what someone comes, then what's the next step when you know the emotional things they had gone through.
Yeah, well, let's use bullying as an example.
Yeah,
Let's say someone is still struggling with the effects of that. So between those younger ages, maybe each time you would approach school or each time you'd be involved with those bullies, your system would feel panicked, stressed, worried. So it stores an emotional memory image. Depending on how long you're then bullied for, your system then accumulates this collection of emotional memory images that you then start to carry around as baggage.
yeah.
Now, 20 years later, you then give me a ring and say, look, I want to take my business or my relationships to the next level, but for whatever reason, I just feel stuck or blocked or there's something holding me back.
Mm,
Now, when that happens, what we're really looking for are the really subtle changes in our non-verbal behavior that give us clues about what the issue is. So in particular, we're looking for three types of cues. We're looking for when you show an increase or a decrease in arousal. So,
yeah.
heart rate, hands sweating, mouth sweating. We're looking for signs of cognitive processing. If your blink rate increases, if you spend longer times trying to reply. And then we look at your emotional processing. So what happens when you think about a certain topic?
Yeah.
Now, in a standard therapy room, the focus is on the words. But what we actually find is if we focus on these subtle nonverbal behaviors, they give us the things that actually lead to the source of the problem.
Right.
And then when we apply our intervention there, we get a much more holistic resolution because we're not dealing with the stories that we've generated, we're dealing with the information from the time.
Mm,
And there's a million different ways that we can clear the emotional memory images. The challenge is helping people access them. So effectively in the therapy session, so to speak, I serve as a mirror for the clients to help them go deeper into their own mind to find where the source of the problem is. So not only do they learn more about their nervous system, which kind of helps grow confidence and grow awareness, but then we also deal with the root causes, which then kind of sets people free.
yeah. And in the going to the process, like, do you think like is some people think it's quite straightforward, and some people is find it hard, like they don't believe like a certain things can work. So how long that process, and do you think like people have to work with like a therapist or coaches for like a weekly basis in order to get out, or do they can do it themselves? Do you believe?
So you can definitely do it yourself. That generally takes a bit of training.
Mm,
So if, for example, someone is coming to see me because of a one-off event,
yeah,
so, if it was just an isolated incident, it might have been traumatic, but it was an isolated incident. Usually within 2 to 3 sessions, we can have that resolved. If someone has had 3 or 4 years of bullying, then their parents divorced, then they lost a loved one, then they were involved in two or three more traumas,
yeah,
then that takes more time. So in an ideal world, we would spend time clearing the emotional memory images and then we transition towards helping people do it themselves. So everyone has different preferences. Some people say,
Right.
Danny, I just want you to do it with me all the way. You do the lifting. I'm like, "Okay, fair enough." And then other people are like, "Look, I want to be able to do this myself." So it kind of depends on what the person's goals and objectives are.
Mhm. And so, what is the number one lesson you say, like you have learned over the years working with those kind of individuals, even though, like yourself, like you mentioned, you had to work on yourself. So, what is the number one lesson you say, the emotional things we carrying and the things just holding us back?
I would say the key learning is helping us to understand that we only really have control of three things.
Yeah,
We have control of our perceptions, we have control of our decisions, and we have control of our actions. And that all stems from our perceptions of the world. And
right.
what I would probably say the number one learning is most of the time, the baggage that we're carrying around are the stored perceptions from when we were little. So when we can access those perceptions and view them through the eyes of adult, then we get really, really effective change in a very short space of time. So, although emotions can feel overwhelming, if we can see emotions as feedback that actually something in your system is still detecting danger, then we can take more of a curious approach to resolve it rather than, I've got to talk through all my pains. Because from my perspective, the more you talk about a painful event, then the more you tend to reinforce it. Whereas when we can find the root works there, then we can move on with life and generally enjoy it more.
Yeah, interesting. And those who listening, the listeners today, and they some of them, they tried everything, therapist, and a lot of times like they couldn't help themselves in a way because I spoke like a few people, I think like during the COVID, they have some kind of anxieties, depression, they have going through like a lot of things just holding them back. They feel like hopeless in a way, like they gone to different therapists, doctors, everything like that. So how could you advise them like there is a hope, there is like an alternative solution or like someone's there like to help them out?
Well, the challenge is noticing the distinction between it feels like we've tried everything,
Mm,
but actually in reality we've tried quite a few things that haven't worked.
yeah.
So when I was trying to get things to improve, after, five, six, seven attempts, I started to think to myself, I don't think this will ever change. Like, I think I'm stuck like this. But it was only actually when I found a tool that really worked for me that I realized change can happen quite quickly. So it's that distinction between noticing if you feel like you've tried everything. Whereas actually, if you list down the things that you've tried, you might have tried therapy 4 times, and that might have taken 3 or 4 years. So actually, you've tried one thing for 4 years as opposed to trying any number of the different techniques that are out there. So
Mm,
although it's a bit of a challenging approach to do it, if someone feels like they've done everything, I'd make a list of the specific different techniques you've done, and then you'll quickly realize that actually there's a lot more out there. And just that in itself can help people to realize that maybe if I find something that works for me,
yeah.
that be my focus rather than anything else.
All right, that's great. So, Mr. Danny, we're nearly coming to end of this podcast. So, before we wrap up, if anyone wants to learn more about yourself or your business, where's the best place to find you?
Well, the best place to find me is my website. So that's www.thetraumaexpert.co.uk. That gives you a little bit of information. There's also a full presentation where I go into emotional memory images in more detail. So that's kind of the hub where all the information is. So I'd recommend you start there.
All right, that's great. Thank you so much for your time today, joining me in this podcast episode. And I wish you very best of luck with everything you do. And yeah, good luck and thank you.
Thank you for having me.
That was my pleasure. So that's a wrap, guys. Thank you so much for listening to this podcast episode with Mr. Danny. I hope you enjoyed our conversation. If anyone wants to learn more about him, you can visit his website. I'm going to put the link on a description for you. Also, you can find him on the social media platforms. So until then, I'll talk to you in the next episode. So take care.